Good morning, and thank you for joining Resilient You. On our show, we have guests that talk about topics of resilience. Many of them are experts in their field. Today, we have someone who is, I'm so excited to introduce Courtney J. Owens. I found Courtney when I was watching a TedX talk and looking for someone, but unfortunately I didn't find the person I was looking for. But I am so grateful to have found Courtney. She inspired me that day, and Courtney, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me today. It is a pleasure and an honor to be sitting here chit-chatting and talking with you today. And I don't think that was by chance. I think that was just purposely meant for you to find me so we could talk. And yes, I love it.
And yeah, and share the message. Well, I love that idea because, again, I feel everything happens for a reason.
Absolutely.
Um, So, Courtney, I saw online that you are a motivational speaker. You use poetry. You are a catalyst for change and give a voice for those who would otherwise go unheard. That's something that I'm doing here as well on my show.
Absolutely.
You are more eloquent than I. You have a way and the rhyming and the just the way that it just I mean goosebumps. Let me tell you, when I heard you speak, I was just in awe. So,
Thank
um,
you.
yeah. So you have the works of Courtney J. Owens,
hmm
and you're aiming to inspire and uplift through the power of words. You want to tell our listeners a little bit about your mission and your journey right now?
Absolutely. Well, the works of Courtney J. Owens, that's my brand and my company. And I'm a certified life coach. But what I like to do is use the power of words to motivate people. I am a poet and a spoken word artist, and I've been doing that since I was probably about 8 or 9 years old with poetry, inspired by the likes of Maya Angelou, Nikki Giovanni. And I was just with Nikki Giovanni a few weeks ago. So, whew, that was a powerful thing. But poetry has always been my love, and I have found that I am able to use my poetry to open up doors. A poet, a poet, we usually lay our hearts on the line. We say what a lot of people are thinking or are afraid to express. So I use that poetry to kind of like captivate the audience and reel them in and just always have a message along with my poetry. And even when I'm doing like motivational talks, I always refer back to my poetry. That is my first love. So, of course, I'm going to do what brings me passion and what brings me joy to bring other people joy. So, the words have power. And I have discovered that the words and even the tone of my voice, it just uplifts. And you know what? When I speak to people, I'm not only speaking for people, I'm speaking for myself. Because 9 times out of the 10, whatever I'm speaking about, I have gone through. I'm very transparent. So I'm not afraid to talk about situations. And I've learned that being able to talk about situations opens up the door to healing.
That is so true. That is so true. I'm a life coach as well. 2014, I did that certification.
hmm
I have since put out a book. I've Emotional Strength Explained. It's a workbook, and then recently we've done a book for kids as well, an activity book to teach them about emotional strength. Now, I say this because I want to highlight, some of the things that I know you've shared with me, and in using your your brave, ways and your words and transparency,
hmm
you have connected with a lot of folks and really helped to give them hope. And that's some of the things that I want to talk about today that our listeners can learn from. And our listeners this show is broadcast in 131 countries. It's
Wow.
broadcast out of New York as well as Manchester, United Kingdom.
Okay.
It's Power 98.5 FM satellite radio. The producer is Stephen Kuwoko. He's an amazing person. If you want to look him up as well,
Okay.
we'll have to put you in contact with him.
Absolutely. I would love that.
Yeah, but this, what do you want to talk about today, Courtney? I know that you have been through a lot. You're a woman, you are a Black woman,
Hmm.
you are a mother,
Yeah,
just to name a few roles that you play. Yeah, I know
absolutely.
you're a student. I know that you went to Ashford University, and you're pursuing your master's, or you receive your master's. I'm not sure.
Doing my master's, I get caught up in life, and it's one of those stop and start type things with me. I get so busy.
Yeah, well, that's amazing in itself. It's, as an adult and, going back to school, and that's so admirable. A few weeks ago, I had a guest, urban scholar, Joe Nash, and we spoke about our past, where we came up from the streets.
Hmm.
I may not look like I came from the streets, but I did.
Right, and
um,
it's
and when
and thank God I don't look like what I've been through.
Yes, yes. When we tell people our stories, they're just amazed, right?
Hmm.
So what do you want to talk about today, Courtney?
We can talk about what I did my TED talk on, and that was the plight of debunking the theory of the angry Black woman. Like, we are not angry, we are simply tired. And I always relate that to the saying, it's okay to not be okay. Many times, a lot of Black women, or just women in general, we get the angry label when we begin to speak out and we begin to tell how we feel. And it's not exactly always going against the grain, but I'm constantly tired of explaining myself. I'm tired of seeing unequal treatment. And I'm just sick and tired of being sick and tired, in the famous words of Fannie Lou Hamer. So I did my talk based on that topic. And I started out with a workday in corporate America. And I go back to even the way that I wear my hair. I wear my hair in locks. And sometimes working in corporate America is certain hairstyles that are not considered suitable for, the office. And now there had to be the Crown Act put in place so there couldn't be any discrimination based on the way that I wear my hair. And we all know that sometimes, Black women, we have these outrageous hairstyles, and it's just a part of a culture. But I do not want that to take away from my abilities and my capabilities to perform my job. So that doesn't need to be a distraction from me actually being able to perform my job. And then the second part of my talk, I talked about, and I don't want to bunch everything up, but I'm just kind of giving a platform of how everything was. But in the second part of my talk, I talked about the generational trauma that was passed down from my mother's mother. Oftentimes growing up, I looked at my mother as being an angry Black woman. But now at 42, we have begun to talk about her life. She never really opened up to that. And a lot of the times, it's a mental health issue. And in the Black and brown community, mental health is a stigma. It's not always talked about. So now the doors are kind of open for mental health in the Black and brown community. So it's people like myself. I'm a mental health advocate in my community. And like I said, I'm a life coach as well. But it's telling those stories. And my mother is a dark skinned woman. So she grew up being like the black sheep of her family. And a lot of the times it's like racism within a race with complexion. Sometimes people in the Black community see fair skinned people get better treatment, better job opportunities. So I didn't know my mother really dealt with that growing up. And that was one of the reasons why, she grew up feeling the way that she did and released some of her trauma on myself and my brothers, because that's just what she grew up under. And my older brother, he's a darker skinned guy. And it was like most of the time they would bump heads. And I never understood why until I asked my mom. I opened the door
Mm.
and asked her, why do you feel a certain way? Can you please tell me about your childhood? And because she was that dark skinned child, she never like received hugs and affection, not from her own mother. So just being able to navigate and overcome that and still raise three children on her own, and me now understanding that, and that's just a sad fact. And at 17 she ended up being pregnant, and she was forced into a marriage. And of course she didn't want to get married at 17, but that was the right thing to do at that time. this was 1967, 68. So now the boom of like being a single parent and just having the kids and being able to make it, that wasn't the thing back in those days. You were expected to be married. So she held on to all that trauma and never released it. So all of her trauma, it came out in us. And
So now let me just stop you a minute there. So racism within a race.
yes.
Um, when I grew up, I remember because I grew up in an urban neighborhood and
Mhm.
I was the minority as the white girl. So I grew up with a lot of black and Hispanic people, and it was actually the opposite. This was in the 80s, 70s and
Okay.
early 80s, and it was the opposite. It was that if you had lighter skin, you were not deemed as high regard as a darker skin person. So that was a whole nother thing. So it's interesting to hear you say that race within a racism can exist.
Yeah, absolutely. And during that time that you were talking about, it's kind of like the surge in I'm black and I'm proud, like the whole that era. So yeah, it just kind of flipped and yeah, and I just never understood that, but just understanding the history of everything. Because if you go back to slavery, like the lighter complected slave was usually in the house, the cook, the chauffeur, and the darker skinned slaves were out in the field doing the rough and the
Mm-mm.
tough labor. So all of that, it kind of coincides with generational trauma, like the epigenetics type thing.
Mm-mm. So when you talked about your mother and how she didn't get, the love and affection. Now, how was it in your house when you were growing up? Was she a hugger? Was she able to show you the children in that way,
Yeah,
physical?
absolutely. Especially me, because my brothers are 12 and 8 years older than I am. So by the time that I was coming up, my oldest brother, he had went to the military, and my middle brother, he was kind of doing his own thing. So it was really just me. And she always told me that she made sure that I got the love that she did not. So my mother was always a hugger. She told me I love you every day. And just the encouragement, she was always there every step of the way to make sure that I had. And I even talked about the sacrifices in my TED talk that my mom did. I remember, the kids, my mother used to wear shoes that had holes in them. But all along, I had on like the latest, greatest Air Jordans. I think Reebok pumps were out back then. So, the kids, they talked about my mom's shoes, but my shoes, they were Air Jordans. So none of that mattered to her at the end of the day, even though I got picked on. She would tell me, well, look on your feet. What do you have on your feet? Don't worry about what's on my feet. You just worry about what's on your feet.
Mm-mm. So it's true then that we all and I've heard it before where people want to, give their kids a better life,
Mhm.
be a better parent than their parent was. And so, one of the things that is happening in this world today is, equality, right? And people
Mhm.
can use that voice. And I just love your platform that you're able to come up and, and speak to that. So listeners, if you're out there, keep in mind that no matter what you're going through, no matter what you have been through, if you have a child in your life, and I talk about this on my show, is they need a softer path, right? The kids need to know, especially with everything they're dealing with today. It's such an interesting time, but keep in mind that they do need that softer path, and regardless of whatever generational stuff, you can stop it now. You can break that stigma of mental health. You don't have to get wrapped
Mhm.
up in the same drama or what you've learned in your household. You can change that to provide a better way for the youth of today.
Yeah, and kids, they definitely need that. And I think we can kind of see that now with the generational shifts. A lot of kids, they don't receive simple love, like hugs and encouragement. And my boys are 20 and 16 now. So I'm dealing with adult children and late teens. So I'm having a hard time, especially with my oldest son, to getting to the point of I have to let go in order so that you can grow. Like I can't be your crutch all the time. So I'm kind of at that point in my own life. Okay, like when do I actually say I'm not doing this, or I can back off, or I can trust you to be the adult that I've raised, but at the same time, I have to respect his wants and his dreams, because my dreams for him aren't necessarily his dreams. You know what I mean? So just navigating that and learning when to say, okay, you can be an adult, but then when you get a call that say, hey mom, I don't know what to tell these people, so it's kind of like, eh, what do I do?
Yeah, yeah. Now, you mentioned your boys.
Hmm.
One of the topics of resilience is when things happen in life, challenges or trauma, resilience is the ability to recover from that.
Yes.
Um, so one of the things you mentioned as a failure or a difficult situation in your life was when you were young, um, around your oldest son.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. Because, like I said, I'm very transparent. And at one point, I was ashamed of my story. But after telling my story, I've learned that I'm not the only one. It happens. And I'll go ahead and explain what happened. When my oldest son turned 14 years of age, we found out that the guy that we thought was his father for 14 years turned out not to be his father. And at that time that I got pregnant with my son, I was 20 years old. I gave birth to him at 21. I was 20 years old, and I had been in a relationship with an older guy, and he was very abusive. So at 19 years old, I'm going through domestic violence situations, constantly being cheated on, constantly being put down. So I go from my mother's care to this guy's care, and I had got fed up with the situations and him constantly cheating. And I had a male friend, and he was a really, really good friend, and we ended up, sleeping together one time, and he ends up getting locked up. He does 14 years in prison. So I'm pregnant. I'm still with the father, the alleged father, right? I don't want to sound like Maury Povich, but I'm
Hmm.
still with the alleged father at this time, and the real father, he's locked up in prison for 14 years. So I never gave it a second thought, went on about my life. And my son, he looked so much like me, and we never even gave it a second thought. I was never questioned. But turns out the guy, he gets out of prison, and we become Facebook friends. And he's looking through my pictures, and he sees a picture of my son, and he says, wow, this, he inboxes me and said, wow, this kid looks like me when I was his age. And he made like a side by side picture, and I'll be damned if they did not look just alike. The resemblance was uncanny, and it was striking. And after seeing all that, of course, he wanted to get some DNA. And I was against it, like, no, I'm scared. Like, I'm afraid. Like, what if he turns out to be yours? And he helped me through that. And I give big kudos to him, because he was like, any situation, we can get through this situation. It's going to be a lot of hurt feelings. But in the end, the truth will be exposed. And it, after the truth is exposed, it's on everybody of what we want to do or how we want to move forward. So needless to say, my son turned out to be 99.9% his.
Hmm.
And at the time that it happened, I wasn't with either one of them. So I didn't have a relationship with either one of them. So I didn't have that worry. So I told my son's first father, what was going on. And we have another son, my youngest son, that is his son. So everybody's still connected. So I had to be real careful of how I handled this, because my youngest son is still involved. But at the end of the day, my son, he didn't lose a dad. He gained two dads out of the
Hmm.
situation. And my whole thing, a lot of people didn't want me to tell my son what was going on. Wait till
Hmm.
he's 18, wait till he's 18. But I'm like, no, he's 14 now. He's still under my care. So I still have time enough to mold and shape and make this situation go from worse to better.
Hmm.
So, I was able to get to the truth. And the thing about me with my son, it was just, I had to be really honest with him. Like, I was 20 years old. I was dealing with, your dad, because at the end of the day, he still calls him dad too. And things happened. He cheated on me. I cheated on him. I ended up being with somebody else. And, you know, he's not your dad. And telling my son that, I thought he was going to be like so upset, storm out the restaurant. And he looked at me during that time with tears in his eyes. And he said, "Oh, man, Mom, I thought you were going to tell me you had cancer or something."
Oh,
So I'm like, I'm just stressing myself out to the max. And this kid, so that situation, it could have been so terrible, but just by me being honest first with myself, because it come to terms that, okay, I made a mistake. I'm not the only one that had this mistake, but it is up to me to be honest with this and tell my son what is going on. So just the whole honesty, and that made that situation so much better. So kudos to both of my son's dad, because now he has two, and I'm okay with that.
so yeah, so that's, and that's something like each one of us, like we're not perfect people, right? So we go through
Hmm.
life, things happen. I have a half sister. My mother was divorced from my father and she met another man and they had a baby. Well, they didn't get married, but it turned
Okay.
out that we found out years later, like when my sister was, I don't know, maybe 20, that she had a brother who was 20. So she
Right.
had another sibling. And, the whole point is that, by being open and being honest, my name is Alicia and it means truth.
Hmm.
So whenever I hear someone telling the truth and not trying to save people's feelings or, keep lies, keep secrets,
Yeah,
I really believe in that because, the more honest and open you can be with others and with yourself, the easier your life is and the more things that come your way, whether believe in God or believe in a higher
absolutely.
power. It's really true that there is so much more out there, right? So as you said,
Absolutely.
like he now has another relationship with another person to
Yeah.
give him that extra support. So
The thing that I wanted to do with that situation, I asked my son for forgiveness because I wanted him to be forgiven. I wanted to be forgiven for what, you know, the situation that I had caused, because I feel that forgiveness, it opens up the door to healing. So we are all able to heal at the same time. Even my youngest son, and they're torn between like, wow, we're not full brothers. Technically, we're half brothers. I'm like, no, you're full brothers. We're not playing that. We're not doing any of that. Everybody's no. Everything is still the same. We just have another person in our life. And he came in and he helped my youngest son do different things. So it was just all a big blended family. So everything works out. And just the honesty and just the truthfulness of an ugly situation.
yeah, so honesty and transparency, that's key. Because imagine if you had handled it a different way. Imagine if you had kept that from him, that might have built up inside of you. Your body might have held on to it. What,
Hmm.
you mentioned something in your talk about your body turning against you and dealing. So what's with that? I
I'll
have to ask. I have to ask.
explain that. And I work for one of the big three car manufacturers. Actually, I do all this mental health and speaking because that's my passion. But I actually work in the big three, one of the big three corporations, and I had stepped over into a management position. And from the day that I had walked into this corporation, I knew that I wanted to climb the ladder in corporate America, and I was offered the opportunity to do that. And I feel that opportunity came about because of what happened in this country with the George Floyd situation. And headquarters looking on our flow chart and not seeing any Black people in positions. And a lot of us, we have degrees and we would just be interested in climbing up the ladder. But it's not always easy coming from the union side. I've worked on the union side. You know, I've been in assembly, I've been in machining areas, and I've worked with people side by side. So crossing over into the management, it's like, okay, now I have to reprimand people that I've worked side by side with, people that we've probably broken the same rules together. So now I have to be this big boss person. And I had to deal not with just people that I worked with, but I had to deal with management. And I don't feel like I was given a fair shot because it was like I was a picked, it's kind of like a pawn. I don't really want to say a pawn, but it just didn't fit me. And it was one of those things to me where God, like I'm a believer in God, like you said. And I believe that sometimes God, He will give you the desires of your heart, but He will make you so uncomfortable because there is a bigger plan and a bigger purpose for your life. Now, needless to say, when I was in this corporate job, I was under so much stress. I'm taking work home, I'm working afternoon shift, and I had already put my time in back to my original classification. But I was so, how do I want to say this? I was so ashamed, maybe, because I felt like I was on the ladder to being able to gain a great position in corporate America. And I didn't want the shame of saying that I failed, and I'm going to go back to my original classification. But I talked to my mom, and I even went to therapy. That's the initial thing that drove me to therapy. I had never been to therapy. So I decided to go to therapy because I didn't want to feel like I had been a failure, that I am a failure. So that situation right there is what catapulted me to actually go to therapy and to be able to tell myself, Courtney, if something does not fit you, it's okay to leave something that does not quit you. And I am not a failure. I have learned that this is not what fits me, and this is not my purpose. And ever since I stepped down from that position, because it wasn't me, I wasn't living in my truth, so many doors have opened for me because I accepted that fact. I accepted the fact that my place is not trying to climb corporate the corporate ladder. My place is being in the community and using my voice to help people. So that made me kind of go full force into what I'm doing now. And just the way my body responded to that stress, I said that I will never ever do something and stay in something that does not fit me. I don't care what anybody else thinks, and I don't care what anybody else feels. If something in my life is bringing me that much stress to the point where my body is revolting against itself, I will not do it.
Yeah, amen, amen. So live in your truth, people. If you're listening to this and you're having any, imbalances in your life, things are just not the way you thought, or not the way you intended. If you're having headaches, if you wake
Mm,
up and you don't want to go to work, you don't want to face the day, look
yeah,
at it. There's probably changes that you can make, although it seems difficult at first.
yeah,
You can hear from Courtney's experience that you can make changes and you can find out what is going to help you, and then you can live in your truth. I love that, Courtney.
can definitely do that. And I'm a firm believer of pain births purpose. The more it's like when you're in a painful moment, it's almost like you're down in a valley. Now, if you're in a valley and you want to get out this valley, you have to look up. So it's one of those things where you have to look up, but you also have to look inside and see, like, okay, what is my passion? What is something that I enjoy doing that I will do, even if I didn't make a dollar doing it? Like, I think we have to tap into our passion. And I always tell my boys that, like, okay, it sounds good and it sounds great to, go to college, get the 4 year degree. But what if that isn't for you? Are you willing to sacrifice something that somebody else said was for you for something that is
Mm.
for you by your own means?
Yeah, yeah, it's true because kids today, it's almost like no matter what you want to do in life, there's a path, and it doesn't have to match everybody else's path, right?
Mm,
And so it's tough for kids these days because they're expected to go to college, they're expected to, but there's other ways, there's trades, there's different,
absolutely.
things. So the more that people can be real with themselves, get out of
Mhm.
the Insta, the Snap, and everything, the TikToks.
Yes,
Don't try to be an influencer because there is more to life than that.
it is. Yes. And kids, they sometimes don't even know how to live in front, not being in front of a screen. They don't even know how to communicate.
Yes, that's so true. And now with COVID, with us bouncing back and getting back to in person,
Mm-hmm.
it's really nice to see. I have a teenager who's in high school, and I have a 9-year-old, and it's so good to see that they are now kind of talking a bit more,
Yes.
like I said, when you go to the friends' houses, are you speaking to the parents? You look them in
Right.
the eye, you shake the hand, you make
Yeah.
sure you do, and he's like, "What are you talking about, Mom?" And I'm like, "Don't just walk in and stand there."
Right.
There was this one boy that came, and afterwards I said, "Nick, is he nice? Is he a good kid?" Because
Mm-hmm.
he didn't talk to me. He did not say hello. And I don't go for that. Like, you need to, at least say hello.
Tactics.
You use manners, but it's true, so like it's a lot for people to kind of put themselves out there. Like, I know myself, I didn't have my parents were separated.
Mm-hmm.
My father left, and so my mother was mentally ill,
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't have a lot of support. So when the time came for me to go out into the world, I I did it. I worked a lot of temp jobs. I did
Right.
what I did a cleaning business with a friend of mine for a while.
Mm-hmm.
That was not for me. Let me tell you what. I waited tables, like I did things. But my son today, he's like, "No, Mom, I don't want to do landscaping. It's too much work."
Yeah.
Like they're really at a different place. And so imagine if we're trying to break those generational, curses
Mhm.
that were thrust upon us.
Yes. Out
Well,
of our own.
yes, yes. It's like it's so important. And as a parent, like you said, you have to kind of be there for them, know when to to let go, let them fly on their own, and how to turn their dreams into reality.
Yeah.
That's it's I never knew that all this was going to come into parenting.
You're right. Me neither. And I'm 42 years old now, and my sons are getting at that age where I'm like, okay, I still remember the dreams that I had, and now I'm able to pursue them. So it's like I'm six different people in one person. Like I'm helping them with their dreams, but then I put my dreams on hold for so long being a single mom, and now I'm at the point where I want to work on my dreams. So now I'm like, okay, I can't stop anymore. Like
I
everybody's of age, like I gotta keep going. If I keep going, it'll be better for all of us. So yeah, that's a pivotal moment.
So yeah, so speaking of your goals, so you you went to Ashford University, you're
Mhm.
pursuing your master's degree.
Yes,
You are a co-author of a book called Sporadic Thoughts.
absolutely.
Tell us about that book. Tell our listeners about the book you're a co-author of, Sporadic Thoughts.
Yes, I am the co-author of the book Sporadic Thoughts, and I wrote that along with my co-author Matthew Sanders. And it's kind of like a modern urban tale of Mars versus Venus type thing. Everything is from a male's perspective and from a female's perspective, and we talked about like how some men have to deal with angry baby mothers, as we would call them. And my perspective is coming from, say, a child support issue where I am talking about a lot of women, they use their children as pawns for child support, where the dad, he'll be ordered to pay child support, but will not be allowed to see their children. So I'm coming from a female's perspective, and I'm saying things like a child should not be used as a pawn for child support. And if the father pays child support, he should be allowed to have a relationship with his child. Even if he does not pay child support, he should be able to have a relationship with his child. So I'm coming from a perspective of a woman that's usually not seen. A lot of women are usually pro child support. And if he's not doing right, if he's not doing things under my terms, then he should not be allowed to see the child. But I'm giving another perspective of, even if the father is not being a father up to your perspective, maybe he's just doing the best that he can. And you should allow that child to have a relationship with their dad, because in the end, the child is the only one who is actually affected by what's going on between the parents. So I'm just coming at a different angle and a different point of view, kind of like a woman's devil's advocate, because I'm not necessarily doing the thing that most women would think. I'm just giving another perspective.
Nice, nice. Um, so listeners, the book is called Sporadic Thoughts,
Yeah,
and where can they find that book?
it is actually available on Amazon, and it is available on Walmart.com, and it is also available on beautifulmindcreations.com. But Amazon is usually the go-to place for the book. We've been doing the book's been out about a year now, and we have done excellent. We actually are doing a podcast based off sporadic thoughts where we go in and we don't even have a script. We just talk about whatever comes to mind, and I give my point of view, and my co-author Matt, he gives his point of view, and that's also on iHeartRadio. And we drop a new podcast every Wednesday at noon. So
Oh,
yes, we just doing that, and we just kind of sit and talk. We talk about community events, what's going on in our community. We talk about current events that we see in the news, and we just try to uplift and support each other.
wonderful. And what is the name of that podcast?
Sporadic thoughts as well.
Oh, okay, wonderful. So,
Yeah, we're
folks who
kind of
can,
newbies, so we're just starting out and getting good topics and trying to move forward.
yeah, well, no, that's also a wonderful way to, get that message out there and have a following. Um, so, folks, Sporadic Thoughts Wednesdays at noon.
Mm-hmm.
Um, podcast as well. You can find their book on Amazon, Walmart, and Beautiful Minds. Um, you know, .com.
You're right.
So, in everything we're talking about today, the message to me seems like we want to tell people that no matter what it is you're going through, what situation you're in, no matter the people you're dealing with, no matter your history,
Hmm.
if you can find something that you have a passion for and actually do it, you can really change your way of life and open doors. You can use, the
Yeah.
there's so many things that Courtney has gone through, and if you have a chance, watch this TEDx talk when they put it out there. I looked again today; I didn't see it
Yeah.
as a replay, but it's really amazing to listen to her talk. Um, this is another tool. The book Emotional Strength Explained. It has prompts, so it helps you to be accountable, but also to understand what you're going through. Like it has prompts and it invites you to go through what you might go through with a counselor, and it really helps you to get perspective, to figure out what's healthy, what kind of support you need. There's tips and tricks about things that you can control. If you're feeling like, life isn't what you want, you can, I mean, there's so many resources online as well. Um, Courtney, what else are you doing? Or can people come and hear you live?
Yes. I was actually I'm from Lima, Ohio, and that's where I am right now. It's kind of been the toughest challenge is being getting out there because it's a small town, and I'm right smack dab in the middle of Toledo, Ohio. If anybody's ever heard of that, in Dayton, Ohio. So now my thing is trying to branch out. But I'm doing at the Vibe Coffee House and Cafe here in Lima, Ohio. We have a poetry night, and we call it Deep Voices, and we highlight myself and as well as a few other artists. We highlight our poetry and the poets that's in the community, and we do spoken word in order just to have a voice. So now I'm getting ready to start building a stronger social media presence so I can get my poetry and my spoken word and my motivational talks out there. I was so not into like the whole social media thing with the TikToks and the Instagram, but now that's almost like the way to do everything. So I'm getting ready to start to build a stronger social media presence so you can go to the click of a button and find me and be able to be inspired by some of my work and some of my words. So that's my goal right now. That's what I'm in the process of building right now.
So that's something else that is, amazing to me, right? How, you have six different roles that you're holding
Mhm.
right now. You still are not letting things hold you back, right? So,
Oh,
listeners, I really hope that you are getting inspired from Courtney today. She was a single mother. She was a black woman. She has pushed forward out of an original career that didn't suit her. Um,
yeah.
and just, I mean, all of those, I could keep going, but if I stop and really think about that and let that sit, it just amazes me. And I'm a woman too, right? So I know
Yeah.
I get looked at and judged, even
Hmm.
if, you know, I don't know,
Yeah.
if I'm wearing something or if I'm overweight or if I am looking a certain way. There's so many people that are out there judging us. And so when I
Absolutely.
hear everything you've done, Courtney, I'm just amazed.
Thank you. And you know what? I've discovered that the only limitation is self. And I really am the only person that can put a cap and put a limit on what I'm trying to do. And the more I accept that and the more I discover that, it seems like that the further along I get, it's so many times that we tell ourselves that we can't do something because, I'm a single mom or because I'm a black woman. I can't do this and I can't do that. Who said I couldn't do those things? Who ever said that I couldn't write a book? Who said that I couldn't get up on a stage at a TEDx speaking event and talk about my everyday experience? Who said that I couldn't use my voice to inspire people? Who said that I couldn't gain a strong social media presence? Who said these things? Who said that I couldn't do something? So I always remember that. And I tell myself that daily. And I'm one of those people, I believe in affirmations. Every morning I get up, I look in the mirror and tell myself, I am strong. I am more than a conqueror. I am beautiful. I am just gracious. And I find myself, I move in a spirit of gratitude. And that gratitude, it has opened up the door for so many other things. And I always remember to have a smile on my face and to meet people with kindness, because you don't know what somebody's going through. And that smile on your face, that might be just the light that sparks another person. And I feel like I have an aura on myself because I don't meet strangers too often. And I can be sitting at a bus stop and somebody will just come up and start telling me their life story. Why? I don't know. Maybe I'm one of those people that people just feel comfortable with, and just my transparency. And I don't care what I'm going through, what kind of darkness I'm facing. I always try to keep a smile on my face. And I always remember that even in darkness, there's the moon. So there's just no limitations to what you can do. You have to move out of your own way.
Mm, I love that. So it's so true. Move out of our own way. When I was growing up, I heard, people who were either sitting out on the front stoop or, you know, kind of not really being productive in their life. And here they had these kids and I would wonder, what am I going to do with myself when I grow up? And I don't know that all of those people did. And unfortunately, come to find out through this Facebook that we had some people that we knew back in the day, they didn't make it out. Either they went to jail or they died early, they died young. And I just wonder, what if they heard this message? What if they heard
Absolutely.
this message to not let your own inner thoughts stop you, right? And don't let the words of others stop you either, because some people just don't, they're not looking out for you. And you have to keep that in mind as well. Be careful of where you put your trust and look
Hmm.
for those things that are healthy. That's something that a lot of young people especially don't really realize. They have somebody they're friends with and
Yes.
they lead them down the wrong path.
Absolutely. And I was just telling my son this the other day. I had to tell him and remind him that he was a seed. And I told him, now, what do you do with the seed? He says, you plant it. And I'm like, so what do you do when you pass away? You get buried. I said, both of those things are in a deep, dark space. But the seed is in a deep, dark space in order to develop roots and to attach to the source. And I always tell him that the source is God. Once you're buried for death because you have died. A seed is buried for growth. So don't ever get in a position where you confuse the two. They both go in a deep, dark space, but that seed is only buried in order to develop roots to attach to the source. And once that plant and once that seed develops roots, it shoots through the ground and it becomes a plant, and then it buds into a flower. But all the while, it needs the sunshine. It also needs the rain. So never ever confuse the two. You might be in a deep, dark space, but you are planted. You are not buried. You're only planted to develop roots, to grow into something that is beautiful and beyond your wildest imagination. Like one of my things, and I think I'm going to call my next book this: the seed, the caterpillar, and the butterfly. The transitions of life, like the butterfly, it's in this ugly cocoon. But while it's in that cocoon, it's transforming, and it'll eventually emerge into something beautiful, colorful, beautiful, marvelous, all that good stuff.
I actually have a mug and it says something about the butterfly, be the butterfly that once thought its life was over.
Wow.
And and that's the same premise that,
Hmm.
just when, you think that things aren't working for you and your life is over, and why not go to that vice, go out with, at night, stay out
Yeah,
late, do things that you're not proud of, that your mother wouldn't be proud of. But
absolutely.
it's really that each new day is really yours. And even
Hmm.
if you have nothing else, you have that window to look out of, you have that sunshine, and hopefully you have support. And so that's, remember these words about being the seed.
Hmm.
And I like that too, what you said about needing the rain, because you can't have growth without the rain and the sun.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think sometimes, God, He puts us in positions to where we have to remember the bad times in order to enjoy the good times.
So one of the things, Courtney, you mentioned is that you are a part of a group of people in your local community
Hmm.
in Ohio that is known as mental ambassadors.
Yes.
You shed
Mental,
light on mental health issues in the Black and Brown communities.
yes. Sometimes, most times, I've come to find out that mental health is a stigma in the Black and the Brown community. And the word crazy has been used to kind of give mental health a bad rap because nobody wants to be labeled as crazy. And a lot of times there are so many resources put in place to help the Black and Brown community, but a lot of people are ashamed to speak out, ashamed of, what they'll be labeled as. And just I'm finding out that everything always goes back to shame. And because we haven't told our stories, we don't realize that a lot of the things that we've gone through and the things that we go through, somebody else have already went through them. There's really nothing new under the sun. And I can remember being younger and saying, Mom, I'm depressed. Well, you better go depress those dishes in the sink because the dishes needed washed. It's like, no, I'm actually feeling a certain kind of way. And a lot of it is taboo. We were taught to sweep a lot of things under the rug. And I think that plays a big part in the Black community because we've been taught to carry trauma that we should have unpacked. We've been taught to suppress our emotions when we should have been taught that it's okay to speak out and it's okay to not be okay. So, as a mental health ambassador, I'm like the person first line that can kind of recognize when somebody is going through something. And I'm a comfortable person that people come up to speak to. So if I'm not the person that's going to find you, if I don't have the answers, then I'm the gateway to finding you the answers, to me hooking you up with a therapist or some kind of advocacy that's going on in the community. And we always keep like a list of resources together so we can refer people to mental health agencies. We can refer people to even dealing with addictions and drugs and alcohol we can refer people to programs that will get them help, and they can realize that they don't have to suffer alone. And we were all trained. We took mental health classes, and we're just kind of like the front line for somebody who doesn't know that these programs exist.
Wonderful. And who better to hear it from but somebody who is, like them or who has been through, somebody they can relate to. I love that because I know in my experience in dealing with, different, either foster children
Hmm.
and helping them, realizing that it's not only the kids that need the support, but it's the parents or the caregivers who need support or different skills. You don't know how many caregivers have issues that they
Yes.
realize that they went through, or oh yeah, my parents fought. That was just what we did on Saturday night. Oh, look, dad hit mom again. Oh, like you. But then when they find out that's domestic violence and that affects people, so
Yes.
learning how they then return and react toward kids, and when kids misbehave or something in their life, they might turn away or shy away from something because they don't understand it. So
Absolutely.
yeah, it's really amazing how that knowledge can really free them.
Yeah, and like a lot of people, they don't realize what trauma is. A lot of people relate trauma with, like actually being in combat, being in war, or something like that. But they don't realize that trauma can come from just experiencing the death of a loved one. Like
Mhm.
COVID, when we were all locked up in the house, and we that was trauma for us. So a lot of people don't understand what trauma is. And once you get to the root and let them know that you could wake up and experience trauma every day, every second of your life, once you recognize what it is, like, oh, this is not normal. Like you said, Saturday nights, like mom beating dad, that's not normal. But I grew up in a household where that was considered normal. No, you grew up in a household that was trauma, so we just recognize, when we start to recognize what it is, like, oh, it has a name and it's not normal.
Right, right. Well, that's just amazing. So you're doing great things in your community, Courtney. And um, what is there anything else that you want to tell our listeners? Like, for example, I usually ask my guests, what do they do? Is there any one thing that they do as a matter of being a win each day, something to help them move forward? Do you have any wins that you do each day?
Every day I'm just grateful for the bad times, for the good times, and being able to just encourage people on a daily basis. I People come up to me all the time, even at the grocery store, at my job, just everywhere. My What brings me joy every day is to make somebody else smile. If I can just do that, even through social media, like life experiences, just being able to make somebody else smile is an absolute win for me every day.
Mm. That's true. That's amazing. It's one of the things that I've told a lot of people. If you can, if you have one negative thought, no matter how innocent you think it
Hmm.
is, like, oh, I'm fat or I'm ugly, let's say, if it's something like that, if you replace that one negative thought
Hmm.
with three positive ones,
Yeah,
you can turn your brain, you can change your brain wiring, you can actually begin that step toward gratitude. Like, oh, I may not be, skinny or in my own best image, but I like my shoulders, right?
yeah,
What's,
yeah.
try and say different things about yourself, because it really is going to make a difference and start you on that path of positivity.
Absolutely. And like you said, it's all about the way you talk to yourself. Like, instead of saying I'm fat, just say, hey, I'm working on myself. It's about a language change and a language tweak. So I'm definitely a firm believer that in the power of thought and the power of the mind.
Wonderful. So Courtney is a motivational speaker. She uses poetry as a catalyst to change. She is a voice for those who would otherwise go unheard. Please check her out. She's available on the socials, the works of Courtney J. Owens.
Hmm.
She's a life coach as well. She is a mental health advocate, and she is a mental health ambassador in her community. remember, listeners, you don't have to tackle this world alone. Um, we've got you, right, Courtney?
Yeah. Yes, we've got you long as you got us.
Right, right. Well, Courtney, I'm looking forward to everything that, that you have to offer. I'm one of your biggest fans, and you certainly made me smile numerous
Thank you.
times. So thank you for that. And Courtney, we look forward to that TED Talk when it comes out. I'm going to share that myself.
Thanks.
And of course, this show is going to be available. I'm also going to check out your podcast,
Okay.
Sporadic Thoughts.
All right.
And I know that your story has definitely impacted many people today.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you having me on your show today. And man, I'm just so grateful. And that's just one of the things that I always move in a spirit of gratitude. And I'm just thankful and grateful to be able to come and share my story on your platform with you. It has been an amazing time.